Today we're going to be speaking about the disparities in pay between Black and non-Black influencers and the various challenges they face during brand deal negotiations. Let's get into it. I'm Justin Moore. Welcome to Creator Wizard, your step-by-step guide to the business of being a creator. Before we get started, I would love for you to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be alerted every time I upload a new video. And don't forget to click the link down below for a downloadable checklist of everything you need to consider when figuring out how much to charge for your brand deals. So today we're going to be speaking with Adesuwa Ajayi, founder of Influencer Pay Gap. The Influencer Pay Gap Instagram account has recently rocketed onto the scene by shining a light on something typically considered taboo, which is talking transparently about influencer pricing and the treatment of Black and non-Black creators. Welcome, Adesuwa.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So can you talk us through the genesis of the Influencer Pay Gap account? Like, how did you get the idea to create it, and why do you think it caught on so quickly?
Well, influencer, like the idea of an influencer pay gap, just generally speaking, isn't necessarily a new concept. A lot of creators have known that there have been disparities in pay, especially when you're looking at the ways in which minorities are treated within the space, specifically Black influencers and creators. So it's something that a lot of people have known about. However, as with any industry, there's generally been a taboo when it comes to discussing prices. It's a bit something that it sometimes is very hush. A lot of people don't know how to kind of, start that conversation amongst people in the space, or maybe people might not necessarily have access to people they feel comfortable enough speaking to about it and, asking about what rates other people are making and getting. So for me, I kind of noticed that unless you had that, tight-knit group of influencers or creators that you can rely on, I felt for a lot of micro influencers and mid to high, even high influencers, unless they had, that access, it was a bit difficult for them to get the specifics from others. And I really wanted to create a space where especially Black influencers were able to, find out what other people are earning in other industries, in other niches or niches similar to theirs, across the similar followings, whatever it is, people that they can look at and think, okay, this is where on a basic level I can maybe price myself. And for me, I just felt it was really important for there to be, not many kind of barriers to entry to that kind of information. So I just said, let me just create a page. I created it in around June, and it just blew up. And I didn't anticipate it blowing up or anything. So yeah, it was crazy to see just how many, creators could resonate, how many creators needed that information and felt that they were kind of winging it. So yeah, it's now grown into such an amazing community where people help one another, full of industry experts, creators, influencers, even stylists, anyone, with creative flair. And also you've got people who, social media experts, so many different kinds of people there, agency owners, all sharing information and all working together to kind of help people navigate this space.
So interesting. And you mentioned this whole concept of it being very taboo, right? And I want to dig into something that I think is also not very often talked about, but a lot of brands are very intentional about the lengths that they go to ensure that the influencers that they enlist for their campaigns are diverse, especially these days, right? And I've heard it described before as kind of like checking the box, right? You need to, like, if you're working with 10 influencers, you want to make, going to want to make sure there's a lot of diversity. I've spoken with a lot of Black and non-Black creators about this particular thing because, and you've actually even talked about it, like when Black History Month in the UK was coming up and you had posted something about, what brands should keep in mind when they're looking to reach out to influencers. Like, what are your thoughts on brands who are just trying to like check the box, and kind of how should creators vet those brands who are reaching out to ensure that they have pure intentions in those situations?
I would say, first of all, I kind of don't necessarily believe that all brands are intentional. I find that, when it comes to diversity, I find that, don't get me wrong, there might be, especially during this time, a tendency to want to, present themselves as or present themselves as diverse. But I don't feel like all brands are intentional just by merit of, the fact that they're trying to tick a box. I would say, for example, a big indicator of that is looking at the company's makeup. You have people like Jackie Aina, who have really gone to great lengths to really talk to brands about, their makeup and how, they've gone about, really ensuring that their organization reflects some of the demographics they reach out to and want to represent. So from that standpoint, I can't confidently say that a lot of brands have necessarily been intentional when it comes to them wanting to, approach things diversely, because I think if you're intentional, it would start from in-house, and how, there's no way you can say that you want to reach out to specific communities without feeling at first that they're welcome within the makeup of your organization. So that's one point. And I would say also becomes a matter of ticking the box. I would say that really speaks to the organization and their willingness to delve deeply when it comes to, really ensuring that creators are not only compensated adequately, but are also, intentionally incorporated within all brand activities and campaigns. A brand that truly cares about, diverse creators wouldn't, one, just rely on simply ticking the box, in my opinion. I think a brand that truly cares will ensure that across all deliverables, across all things, activations that they want to be achieved, they will ensure that they're working with creators that not only align and are not only are talented, but creators that have, a track record of doing amazing things. If we were going to speak about, the capacity of specifically Black creators to really shine and really do amazing things, there's plenty of evidence on the data level, to prove that point. If we're talking about creators managing to create trends, if we're talking about creators and creatives who are able to, create trends in such a mass way that leaves a mark, leaves an imprint that is not forgettable. You're definitely talking about Black creators. You have a lot of Black TikTok stars. You have a lot of Black creators who have gone over and beyond to create things just out of pure talent, pure creativity, and those people are being overlooked. So if we had to just rely solely on the data, if we had to rely solely on, whether they're worthwhile, there's enough data for that. But when I look at things, because I'm sure you've also followed the page and you've seen that we've also had, posts that have come in saying, well, this one Black creator didn't, bring back the results that we expected. It's so interesting that when it does come to, justifications for working with diverse creatives, it feels like there's an over-reliance on, certain metrics. There's an over-reliance on data, in the sense that if one person fails to, in their eyes, bring the results they want, then that's justification used to no longer work with creators across the board within that specific demographic. I don't believe the same pressure is placed on, Caucasians, for example, Caucasian influencers. That's not to say there haven't been instances where they're lowballed, but I would very much doubt that a brand or an agency would say that we're no longer working with Caucasian, influencers or creatives simply because one didn't manage to reach their KPIs for that month, So I think it's also about looking at the ways in which brands judge whether investing in and opening doors for Black creators is a viable route forward. So I definitely think that if if it is a case of a brand simply feeling like all there is to diversity is ticking a box, then that speaks to the brand and speaks to how they view representation. That cannot be a core value of the brand if they simply feel that inclusivity is all about ticking a box, in my opinion.
Right. Super, super interesting. And you know, one of the things I'm interested in your perspective is that, I mean, first of all, the volume of submissions that you get is astounding, right? I mean, you probably, it's like, I'm sure it's very overwhelming sometimes, right? But like after reviewing hundreds or thousands of these submissions, is there anything that maybe has shocked you, or maybe just like common themes or struggles that you've identified that different creators are experiencing? Obviously, pricing is like a major one. That's what a lot of people ask about. But is there any other things that, you know, surprised you after opening up the account now after having seen all these submissions?
In terms of things that have like, you know, maybe shocked me or surprised me, I will say that whilst I did feel that there was a lack of access, the true lack of access to information when it comes to just influencers being able to really understand how to navigate the space, not just on a pay level. Like I have had influencers that had no clue how to, you know, how to go about, you know, working out their engagement rate, for example. To me, being in the space for so long, that was something that came so easily to me, you know, and there's this expectational thing that, you know, for influencers, it might be a thing of that is so simple, you know, that you think that they'll know that, but it's not everyone has that insight. No matter how much, you know, resources are already online and already accessible in that sense, sometimes you still have that gap in information. So that's one thing I think has become very, very clear to me. I also think another thing that's become very clear is there's a disconnect between businesses and influencers, right? You have a lot of businesses who, you know, kind of have this fear of reaching out to influencers and they aren't sure as to how to reach out to influencers. So that's another thing that has become apparent. So I get a lot of businesses, small to mid, apart from the bigger brands, but small to mid influencer businesses who do reach out asking, oh, is this okay? You know, am I treating influencers fairly if I do this? What is the right approach, you know? Especially when you're looking at, for example, ethical brands who really, really care about, you know, maintaining that from everything from production to how they treat their customer base and how they treat their influencers and the people that promote their brands as well. And I would also say outside of, you know, just money and knowing how to price oneself, I think there is, you know, that kind of fear as well, that I did know beforehand, but I think has become extremely apparent. There's that fear that if you do give certain brands feedback on how you feel you were treated, that you would be blackballed within the space, which I think is entirely terrible. And I think it doesn't help brands and it doesn't help influencers. You know, I think one key thing is really, you know, understanding, even though you might have given, you know, here's a feedback form, here's a place that you can respond and whatever. If influencers and creatives feel as though either if they speak out, they'll get blackballed, or, you know, the message won't necessarily get to the point of to someone high up, whereby they can actually see the change and the impact of their feedback, then you have people that will constantly, you know, either keep things to themselves, or you'll have a group of people who are just generally fearful of and being able to speak out and really talking about their experiences. And you also have a group of people who then, as a result, lose confidence, you know, both in their brand, in their, you know, in terms of influencers' brand, both in their brand and in them kind of just creating that idea of like, what's the point? You know, if I feel as though every time I'm being kind of maybe gaslighted from when it comes to my pricing, or my feedback is a bit difficult to kind of give.
Interesting. Yeah. The gaslighting thing, I definitely hear quite a bit. Like people will say, oh, well, this other creator who has twice the amount of followers as you charges less than you, or something like that. Like people will oftentimes, I've definitely seen that. Like a lot of brands will try, or agencies will try to make you feel like your pricing is ludicrous or something like that. So
And I think that's very unprofessional to mention what someone else,
yeah,
is
yeah,
charging.
totally.
But I've seen that quite a lot, and I think that is something that needs to be stopped completely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, I mean, on that note, you had sent over some submissions that were sent to the Influencer Pay Gap account. And I thought it would be illustrative for us to just go through a couple and kind of chat about what your thoughts are, because some of these are really good. So let's talk about this first one. And you have a very specific format that you request when people submit. So people say their race, they say their gender, their follower count, what their engagement rate is, where they're located, and then their question, right? And so this first question is from a white and Hispanic female. She has about 234,000 followers. Her engagement rate's 1.2% in the lifestyle and wellness space, based in the US. And her question was pricing. It was about pricing. It was essentially like, here's what I'm charging for a IG photo in feed, $1,500 to $2,500, video 3K to 4K, and an IG story series 800 to 1,200. And she was essentially asking, what, if her pricing was fair. So I actually have a few thoughts on this one, because I actually engaged with her on this post, and I had mentioned that I thought she should be charging closer to like 7,500 to 10K for an in-feed with that following and that engagement rate. Honestly, I guess, it definitely does depend on the usage rights and the exclusivity and kind of the content vertical. One thing I tell creators a lot is that the content vertical definitely matters, for sure. If it's like more of a mom influencer or cleaning or home or lifestyle, like, let's be fair, like there's a lot of brands who want to partner with creators in that type of vertical, right? So pricing is definitely correlated to content vertical. I'll say that right away. The one thing I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this here was that the creator was asking if people are raising their rates for the holidays. And I kind of have mixed thoughts on this, because first of all, it's all about supply and demand, right? Like if you have more work than you can handle, raise your prices. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, for sure. But I'm not a huge fan of arbitrarily raising your prices, especially if you've worked with the brand in the past, because it kind of puts them in a tough spot if they've worked with you. And especially if there's no discernible difference. Like, it's not like maybe like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden your conversion rates are crazy. Like you're able to sell, 2x or 3x the amount of products that you were 12 months ago or something. Or maybe your engagement rate is higher and you have a lot more followers now or something like that. Yes, there's justification to raise your pricing there. But arbitrarily raising for the holidays, I'm not a huge fan of. What are your thoughts on that?
In terms of raising prices for the holidays, I don't see a problem with it personally. I think when you're looking at, the ways in which brands move around those times, I think there's a very huge emphasis on wanting to sell certain things, and I think where that is, there's then that added pressure placed on the creator, especially given the fact that this creator is also, a consumer as themselves, and is also doing a number of things probably during that time. I don't necessarily see any error in raising rates, also considering the fact that, generally speaking, usually people will have breaks over certain, periods of time. If you're looking at this as like, depending on the creator, if it's like some sort of full-time kind of thing that they're doing, then you're technically asking them to work during a holiday season.
That's a great point, actually.
Otherwise, be taking a break from whatever it is that they do. So I don't have an issue. I think it's, of course, down to the creator. Not every creator raises their rates during Christmas or big seasonal events or whatever, like Halloween or whatever. But I do think, I don't really have a huge issue in them feeling as though, okay, during this time, the value of my deliverable will definitely be at a higher premium,
Yeah, and Yeah, I think, you bring up a great point, which is that brands definitely backload their budgets at the, in Q3 and Q4 especially. More than 50% of brands' budgets come in that time. So, from that perspective, I actually really like your point about the fact that most people are relaxing during the holidays. And if it's kind of like you're working overtime. So I like that. I like that insight. So let's jump to the next one. And this was from a Black female in the beauty niche. She has 18 to 20,000 followers at the time. Her engagement rate was 2 to 3%, lives in Canada. And she was saying that she had some big beauty brands pay her $100 to $200 for an Instagram photo and video and stories. And at the most she's ever gotten paid was $400 for 2 photos. So way too low.
Way too low.
Yeah, I mean, solid engagement rate. Here's the thing. One of my biggest recommendations for smaller creators is to upsell, right? Like, not necessarily just offering to create more photos or videos. I mean, that can be part of it, but like a lever that people can use is just granting them more rights. Maybe they want to repurpose it for paid media or for whitelisting, and you can say, okay, well, my rate is going to be actually 1,000, but for that, I'll also give you 3 months of whitelisting or something like that. And so for that privilege, it's actually $2,000 or something like that. Right. So, but yeah, for this following, I don't know, at least 1,000, 1,500. Yeah.
Definitely grand. And I also feel that when it comes to, upselling as well, sometimes it's just upselling off the bat that you're taking time to create this, outside of, maybe the final deliverable. There's so much that goes into these things sometimes. So I really do feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be justified simply because of usage. It can be the fact that you're actually a content creator and you're taking time. What kind of what price, what value do you place on your time? And I think so in terms of upselling, there's that aspect, but just accounting for the time and effort that goes into creating it in a way that the brand may even, some of these brands have clear outlines on what they need you to do, so there's that as well.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a really good point, which is that a lot of creators think that the only value that they're bringing to the brand is publishing the post on their page, right? And there is a lot of other value in the brand repurposing that, whether it's organically on their page or, how much money do you think that brand would have had to spend if they went out and hired a production company or an ad agency, hired an actor or actress to create that ad, right? And so there is a lot of value that I think a lot of creators don't think about in not only getting distribution on your social media page, but also that this asset that the brand gets to use in most instances, right? So there is a lot of value in that as well.
100%, I agree.
So this next one was from a white female, 23 years old, 55,000 YouTube subscribers, fashion and lifestyle niche. She has about 15,000 average views per video, and she recently was contacted by a brand who wanted 2 integrated videos, which the difference between an integrated and a dedicated video is, it's maybe like a 2 to 3 minute mention for an integration, right? And a dedicated video would be like the whole video dedicated to the brand. So these are just integrated videos, and they offered her $2K for those 2 videos. And after negotiating, she got it for $4K with $500 in product. So, I'm really proud of this person, first of all, double the rate. The one thing that I think is interesting here is that a lot of creators, I think, are very concerned to do any sort of counter offer because they're afraid that the brand's going to walk away. Right. And in my experience, that really doesn't happen very often. There is a reason that they reached out to you to begin with, right? Especially if it's like an agency. Oftentimes they will have pre-vetted you to the brand, right? So, they don't want to necessarily lose you. And so, plus like in your counter offer, you can always leave the door open to negotiation if you really do want to work with them and say something like, well, typically my rate for this statement of work and terms would be closer to like, 5,000 or something, but I definitely want to make it work, so let me know it's feasible, Yeah. And honestly, if they do walk away, perhaps it's for the best because, they're really just looking for someone to get someone cheap, and that's not really a situation you want to be in, right?
I think what really matters sometimes to a lot of creators is the way in which brands kind of, leave things on the table and walk away. But I will say that creators should part of negotiation is being okay to say that this is not for me and this is not what I want, and I'm just going to let this be, and make sure that you don't shortchange yourself intentionally simply because you just want to, you want that thing, or you think that if you don't take it, it's going to hurt your ability to get more things within the space. I think a lot of creators, that something that's become very apparent as well running the page is, besides brands lowballing creators and brands not necessarily treating them very well, there is the part where I think creators should get comfortable with saying no.
Yeah,
and
there
get
is
comfortable, and don't get me wrong, I understand all the things that are informing that, especially when you're looking at underrepresented creators, or creators that feel that they're largely overlooked. There's this feeling that, if I don't take these crumbs, I will never get anything. But that's not the case. I do believe that, especially if you gain more insight and information and notes, like some pointers on how to strategically move within the space, I do think it won't end there. You will get an opportunity that is worthwhile for you, as long as you're just willing to say no to some things as well.
There is a ton of power in saying no. You're absolutely right. And I think that when you do say no, oftentimes brands will respect you more. I think, honestly, because they'll understand that your value and they know your worth. And I think just more generally, like collectively, all creators, all influencers, if they have more confidence in saying no, it'll benefit everyone, right? Because then brands won't have the mentality that it's like, oh, well, okay, this person said no, I'm just going to move on to the next person, right? So when influencers more generally find, their worth and their value, it'll be better for everyone,
Yeah, definitely. It will be better for the space as a whole, 100%.
Absolutely. So this has been a really fantastic conversation. And I was wondering if you had maybe any parting words of advice that you'd like to give to creators or influencers, whether it's about being more confident or pricing or anything like that.
I would say, as someone who is a creative myself, not necessarily an influencer, I would say in time things do fall into place. I think don't be discouraged. One thing that my page has really shown me is that there's a lot of discouragement out there and a lot of discouraged creators, and I understand, but I do feel like if you believe this thing is, a passion of yours, if you believe this is something that, you were born to do, you love doing, please don't be discouraged, and don't, as much as possible, try not to internalize it. It speaks to the industry, it speaks to the space and the things that need to change within the space. It doesn't speak to your talent, it doesn't speak to your ability to create amazing things. And just keep on learning and growing as much as possible. As much information as you can get that and apply it, and trial and error. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just trial and error.
Fantastic, man. I feel pumped up after that. That was a great motivational speech. Well, thank you so much. So how can people find out more about Influencer Pay Gap or follow your account or contact you?
Yeah. So you can go on Instagram and type in Influencer Pay Gap. So I'll be there on there. And I also have my email, Adesuwa at influencerpaygap.com. I'm very much a hidden soul. So that's pretty much all there is in that sense when it comes to contacting me. But yeah, just have fun. Find me on Instagram. Go for it.
Amazing. Thanks again. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. I would love for you to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be alerted every time I upload a new video. And please leave a comment down below if you have any questions or future video ideas, and you are one step closer to becoming a creator wizard. Don't forget, if you want insider tips on how to grow your business as a creator and diversify your income, click the link in the description to join our free newsletter. You'll get exclusive videos, worksheets, and insights on the influencer marketing landscape, access to special product discounts, first look at upcoming courses, and more.